All right. Welcome everybody.
Tervetuloa Sijoittaja.fi ja Triangula Capitalin yhteiseen kansainväliseen sijoitusiltaan. Minun on Mattias Asikainen ja toimin Sijoittaja.fi edustajana täällä. Ja meillä on 3 puheenvuoroa tiedossa. Ensimmäinen on first one is from
from Triangula Capital, Pietari Laurila. Also welcome from my side. My name is Tapio. And we have 3 speakers today, actually 4 speakers today.
Yeah.
And then we have a very interesting event coming up. Most of these things will be in English today, and but maybe one speech is in Finnish. Let's see. And I hope you all understand. And we try to also translate if needed. And, yeah.
And then meillä on tosi paljon myöskin aikaa keskustelua lopussa. Kysymyksiä voidaan ottaa suomeksi ja englanniksi. Ja meillä on paikan päällä tänään. Meillä on Heikkilän Timo Sijoittaja.fi, joka pitää puheenvuoro Pietarin jälkeen. Sitten on eToron analytikko Jakob Westh Christensen. Ja sitten on vielä 4. on Dov Schonkopf eTorolta myöskin sitten kertomassa markkinasta ja sitten osallistumassa myöskin lopussa paneeliin. Mutta oikein paljon tervetuloa meidän puolesta ja päästetään Pietari Laurila.
All right, welcome everybody to the event. So my subject today is about value investing. So I'm a value investor myself. But before we go into the main body of the presentation, then let's talk a little bit about my background. Okay, so I'm a so-called popular investor on eToro. So what that means is that I invest my own money on eToro, but everybody can see what I do on eToro. They can see what stocks are in my portfolio, what trades I do, and my performance. And if people like that, then they can copy me, which means that they will get the same stocks in their portfolios in the same proportions as I have in mine. And today about 12,000 people copy me on eToro, including about 500 Finns. I've been investing for 20 years, and I've done a few different things. So I started with day trading. That means that you buy and sell the stock on the same day. So very fast-paced trading. Now that went well. I made about 100% in the first year. The only problem was that I had a full-time job back then, and this was quite stressful. So what that means is that when you do day trading, you have to be on the screen all the time. So it wasn't really possible to do this. So then, because of that, I developed my next strategy, which I ran from 2005 to 2014. I invested in microcaps, which are very small companies followed by few people. Again, that went well, but in 2014, I noticed that it's not going as well as before. So somebody else, I believe, had discovered the same strategy, started doing that, and then the returns went down. So because of that, I then developed my current strategy. Today I invest in medium-sized and large companies. That's what I've been doing for 11 years, and it's also what I do on eToro. Okay, so the first thing that any investor has to decide when they start investing is what asset classes to invest in. And it seems very simple, but actually if you look at the research, the asset classes you invest in can determine up to 90% of your returns. Okay, so basically, like on the markets, you have 3 main different types of asset class. So you have cash, you have bonds, and you have stocks. And on my slide, if you can get it back up, okay, great. So you can see the performance of these asset classes for the past 125 years. So what you can see is if you invest in cash, over 125 years, you made about double your capital back, 70% return. It's not that much. If you invested in bonds, you could multiply your capital 8 times. It's much better than cash, but still you had to wait 125 years to get that return. And even there were some periods after many, many decades when you didn't make any money at all. Now compare that to stocks. We have a 125-year history here. Over that time period, you could multiply your capital 2,000 times by investing in stocks. That's a massive multiple. You can become rich in the stock market just by being invested for long enough. But of course, people always want to do better. People are greedy, so they ask, what can I do even better than the stock market? Is there any way to beat the stock market? And there's two schools of thought about that. So the first school of thought says that it's not possible. It is just not possible because there's too much competition in the stock market. And that is the school of thought that is represented by the guy who wrote this book on the left. If you haven't read it, I really recommend it. It's called A Random Walk Down Wall Street. What this book basically says is that the best approach to investing is to invest passively. You buy a cheap index fund, you are never going to spend that much money on fees. You're going to get the index return, you're going to get the market return, but that's good enough. You cannot do anything better than that. Fundamentally, because there's too much competition in the markets, stocks are always almost correctly priced. It's futile to try to do better. So that's the one school of thought. The other school of thought is here. It's represented first by a guy called Benjamin Graham. He's a famous value investor who wrote this book in the 1930s. So what he said is that if you buy cheap stocks, meaning stocks which trade at low valuations, stocks which have gone down recently because of some problems, stocks which people love to hate, like these kind of stocks do better than the market. So by buying these stocks, you can outperform the market. The most famous student of Benjamin Graham is a guy called Warren Buffett. So he's the most famous investor in the world, one of the richest people in the world. And the reason for that is that for the past 50 years, he got 20% a year annual returns. That's much better than the market return, double the market return over the same period of time. He has been very successful. Now the only thing is that if you look at the recent history of Warren Buffett, the most famous investor in the world, one of the best investors in the world, there's been a long period of time when even he couldn't beat the market. He lost to the market. He lost to the market over 5 years, over 10 years, over 15 years. And that's already a pretty long time to underperform. And this is not a problem just specific to one investor. So maybe Warren Buffett made some bad decisions, we don't know. But if you look at even the market more broadly, just buying cheap stocks, which many people have liked to do because of their good historical track record, it hasn't been working. So you've been able to buy funds which invest in these cheap stocks, exchange-traded funds, ETFs, but over the past 20 years, so the same amount of time that I've been active in the markets, it hasn't worked. So growth stocks, technology stocks, cryptos, all of these assets, they have way outperformed these traditional value stocks. And okay, you might say that 20 years, it's still a short time. Over the past 50 years or 100 years, these value stocks have done much better than other assets. Okay, it's true, but what I would say is that 20 years is too long a time to underperform. Like if I had underperformed for 20 years, I would not be here today. If I was investing money for anybody else, they would already withdraw their money a long time ago. And maybe even more importantly, you couldn't practically follow this kind of strategy as an investor if it underperforms for 20 years. You would start doing something else. So it doesn't work. So when this kind of thing happens, like a strategy which has worked for a long time, it suddenly stops working, then people start asking questions. So what is the reason for this change? And very smart people have been looking at this question, and a few explanations have been found. And the first explanation is about increased competition. We go back to Warren Buffett. In 1979, 20 people attended Warren Buffett's annual meeting. So he has a company called Berkshire Hathaway, and it organizes an annual meeting. So back then it was 20 people, but fast forward to 2015, and the same event has 40,000 people attending it. So in 35 years, Warren Buffett goes from a total obscurity, nobody knows him, to somebody who everybody who's interested in investing knows. Equally, the ideas of Benjamin Graham, the ideas of Warren Buffett, they became a lot more popular in academic circles. Universities started to teach his approach. There's a course book about value investing which has sold over 100,000 copies. Once a year I go to give a lecture to a university based on this course book. But what this means is that there are 100,000 people who know about value investing, the academic approach to it, how this works. And after they graduate, what happens is they go to work for funds. They actually start investing capital using the value investing approach. Unfortunately, when that happens, then the returns from the strategy go down because competition increases. And that is a result which has been found consistently across markets and across strategies. So when a strategy becomes public, when it becomes well known, then the returns from that strategy go down. It doesn't work as well as before. So before a strategy is published, you can make money with it. After it's published and it becomes well known, you cannot make money with it, or at least you can only make less money with it. According to some research, in 20 years, the strategy stops working after publication. And value investing has been known publicly for way more than 20 years. So this would suggest that maybe value investing, it just doesn't work anymore. And that is what has been found in some literature, which has been looked at this question. In the 1950s, you could make a lot of money with value investing. That was when Warren Buffett got started. Still in the 1970s, even in the 1990s, but today, not much money anymore. So this is the bad news. Competition has increased a lot. It's a lot more difficult to be a value investor today than before. But there's also some good news, which is that if you look at the long-term history of this strategy, then you can see that it has gone through very difficult periods in the past. In the late 19th century, you had a 20-year period when you lost more than 50% investing in value stocks compared to other kinds of stocks. And after that, what happens in the 1910s, 1920s, value investing does really well, and you make back all of the money that you lost and even more. So could we now be in some different or similar type of situation? Maybe if you look at the 2020s, 2030s, can value investing make a comeback? So that is what some people believe, that at the moment we are just in a bad period for value investing. It's going to make a comeback, and historically this has been the case. There has always been a comeback. So we will see. It's possible. The third explanation why value investing has been doing badly recently is interest rates. We had a period of zero interest rates for about 10 years, 5-10 years. And the reality is that a lot of value stocks, they benefit from higher interest rates. A typical value stock is a bank. And if interest rates are at zero, banks have difficulty making money lending. So now that interest rates have increased, then banks have an easier time to make money. On the other hand, the typical growth stock is a technology stock that benefits from low interest rates. So here you can see how in the value indices you have a lot of financial stocks, like including banks. In growth indices you have a lot of technology stocks. As I said, like banks really benefit from higher interest rates. So this was a clear explanation for the poor performance of value stocks in the 2010s decade. It's probably not going to be as important going forward because now interest rates are much higher than zero, and I don't think they're going back to zero. But if interest rates were ever to go back down to zero, then this explanation would again become important. Okay, so the next question is that we know now that value investing, it's been doing badly, and there's like a few reasons for that, like increased competition, maybe some kind of random bad luck, maybe just going through a bad period, maybe low interest rates. No, it's not the case that every value investor has done badly, even over the past 10, 15 years. Like, I consider myself a value investor. I invest in value stocks. For example, at the moment, there's a lot of bank stocks in my portfolio and other value stocks. Regardless of that, I've been on eToro for 4.5 years. The returns have been good, and even before that, during the 2010s, they were okay also. So how did that happen? So I think the first thing really is that you don't need to be a pure value investor. There's no rule to say that you must only do like value investing and nothing else. You can combine different types of strategies. In the 2010s, value was one of the worst strategies to invest in. A lot of other strategies did much better. Like here you can see a bunch of them. So value is the worst, but there's many others where you can actually make money. So if you combine multiple strategies, then you can still make money even in a difficult decade like this. And this is an example of a more general approach to predicting difficult variables, like stock prices. Stocks are very difficult to predict what's going to happen next. Nobody knows what's going to happen next in the markets. There could be anything happening. When you're trying to deal with this kind of stuff, with these kind of variables, a good approach is presented in this book, which I really recommend for anybody who's serious about investing. It's called Super Forecasting. And basically what this book says is that when you're trying to predict this type of variables, then it's best to know a little bit about many different things and not a lot about just a single thing. So even if you're an expert, it doesn't help you with these kind of very chaotic types of variables. If you combine multiple approaches, then the errors kind of, in a way, offset each other a little bit, and then you get a better overall prediction. I really believe in this approach myself, and I combine like multiple analysis approaches, like macro analysis, fundamental analysis, technical analysis in my approach, because I believe it helps to make our strategy more robust. It will work in more different market environments. The second thing which has helped me is focusing on those areas where there's less competition. This is always important in any market. I mean, don't go where there's like 100 other people looking at it. Go where there's only 10 people looking at it, or maybe just one person looking at it, or even 0 persons looking at it. For the past 20 years, this has always been critical to the success of my strategy. And I'm always looking like for those type of markets where for some reason people are now thinking that, you know, this market is like over, it's finished, there's nothing going on there. That means that less eyeballs are on it, and then maybe there's more opportunities in that area. Also, you have to keep evolving your strategy. If you want to stay in this game for the long run, the same thing is not always going to work. Maybe one decade value investing works, maybe another decade it's going to be crypto, another decade growth investing, maybe next decade it's going to be something completely different. So every year you have to come up with something new. And that's why people say that like past performance is not indicative of future performance, because it's true. Like you can have a good track record and it doesn't necessarily mean anything about the future, because the markets can change and then the approach that you used is no longer valid. And I think this is going to, for example, hit some technology investors and even crypto investors over the next 10 years. Massive track records, and it won't mean anything about the next 10 years. With value stocks specifically, I think now is a good time to invest in it. And that is because the way I see the market is that in 2020 and 2021 we got the pandemic. That really boosted technology stocks massively. And it accelerated a trend which was already ongoing since 2017. People saw the great performance of the technology stocks, of the growth stocks. They put more money into these areas just because of the good past performance. This is very human nature to do this. You look at the past 3 years, you look at the past 5 years, or even just the past 1 year, then you invest in those areas which have done well. It's not a good approach, but that's the reality. That's what people do. And I think that is the explanation why value stocks did so badly. There's this kind of like psychological bias people investing in what has done well recently. But that also creates an opportunity. It creates an opportunity which is there right now. It might not be there in 3 years, it might not be there in 5 years, but it exists just at this very moment. So I'm quite bullish about value stocks for the next 3-5 years. And that is why I keep all of my personal capital in value stocks. I think they're going to beat growth stocks and many other kind of investments by a big margin over the next 5 years. So this is what I wanted to say. Thank you very much. Do we still have time for questions or good looking?
Jos me lopussa, että esitysten jälkeen, taukojen jälkeen, niin sit voi kysyä Pietarilta myöskin.
Very hot topic question, maybe one or two.
Joo, voidaan ihan ehkä 1-2 ottaa, jos on jollakin heti nyt tässä kielen päällä.
Jäikö mitään semmoista kutisevaa, mikä pitäisi tehdä heti?
Could you tell a little bit how often do you rebalance your stock? How much do you trade basically?
Sure. So I'm a little bit unusual for a value investor in that I trade more than most value investors. I tend to hold for about 2-3 months on average, and that's because I have also a technical analysis element to my strategy. So I like to buy stocks which are oversold. I like to sell stocks which are overbought. And the set of stocks which are oversold or overbought, it changes all the time. So that's why there's turnover. Like many value investors, they hold for 2 years, 3 years, or guys like Warren Buffett sometimes say they want to hold forever. But because I'm not a pure value investor, I combine like these different approaches, then that's why the holding period is a lot shorter.
Miten iso osuus sun kaikista sijoituksista on eTorossa kopioitavissa?
Mitä sä tarkoitat?
Koko portfoliosta niin kopioitavissa eTorossa.
Sori, mä en ymmärrä kysymystä.
Tarkoitatko, että jos on eTorossa on vaikka 50% ja lopulta OP-maailma-indeksissä?
Niin, tai tavallaan henkilökohtaisesta sijoitusvarallisuudesta, niin paljon on eTorossa.
Joo, siis käytännössä kaikki mun likvidit varat on tässä strategiassa. Eli mä käytän muutama eri brokeria, mutta kaikki mun likvidit varat on tässä strategiassa. Sen takia, että mä uskon siihen strategiaan.
All right. Maybe it's time to... Oh, there's one more? Okay, yes.
Kysyy, paljonko vivutat?
No en vivuta ollenkaan, koska mun sijoitushorisontti on noin 50 vuotta. Ja mä uskon, että jossain vaiheessa tulee sellainen päivä, joka on vielä huonompi kuin toistaiseksi historian huonoin päivä, joka tapahtui 1927 lokakuussa. Silloin osakkeet laski 23% yhden päivän aikana. Ja mä uskon, että jossain vaiheessa tapahtuu vielä jotain huonompaa kuin toi. Koska toi oli ihan vain psykologinen miinus 23%. Jos oikeasti joku kunnon kriisi tulee, niin osakkeet voi yhden päivän aikana laskea enemmän kuin ton. Jos sulla on vivutusta käytössä tuollaisena päivänä, sä oot erittäin isoissa ongelmissa. Ja mun kaikki rahat on tässä strategiassa kiinni. Joten mä en voi ottaa sellaista riskiä, että mulla olisi jotain merkittävää vivutusta päälle, jos osakkeet vaikka yhtäkkiä laskee 30% jonkun geopoliittisen uutisen takia.
All right, thank you. I think the rest of the question will be after the other speakers. So let's give a big hand again to Pietari. And we welcome Timo on the stage.
Hei, mä ajattelin pitää suomeksi tämän oma esityksen. Passaako se teille? No niin, kiva. And welcome you all from eToro and others, but let's see how this works. Mulla on siis aiheena markkinakatsaus ja salkkukatsaus. Mä kyllä olisin voinut jatkaa tuosta Pietarin arvosijoittamisesta. Saanko me puoli tuntia lisää aikaa? Mutta mä oon nimittäin itse just tommonen, joka on saanut ton arvosijoittamisen koulutuksen. 2004-2005 valmistuin Oulun yliopistosta KTM:ksi ja just arvosijoittamiseen sillä on menty, mutta on kyllä nyt vähän vaihtanut mielipidettä. Mulla on siis useampi salkku ja meillä on esimerkiksi Sijoittaja.fissä tuo Suomi-fundamenttisalkku, joka sijoittaa suomalaisiin osakkeisiin puhtaasti arvostrategialla. 2009 vuodesta lähtien ollut liveenä 1300% tuotto, indeksi 430%. Yes. Ja Heikkilän Timo, Sijoittaja.fiin perustaja. Ehkä joku on nähnyt webinaarissa tai lukenut artikkeleita. Ja. Nyt siis markkinakatsaus ja sitten esittelen noita meidän salkkuja, mitä löytyy eTorosta. Ollaan osa Sijoittaja.fi osalta ja sijoittajagruppia. Täältä löytyy SFR:stäkin yksi minun kollega. 30 sijoitusalan ammattilaista toimii tässä meidän ryhmässä ja yli 5 vuotta tehty eToron kanssa yhteistyötä. Ja Sijoittaja.fi on ollut olemassa 11 vuotta. Yes. Näyttää niin kuin olisin tullut jostain metsätöistä tuosta kuvasta. No niin, sitten siihen markkinaan. Eli miten markkina on kehittynyt tässä viime aikoina? S&P 500-indeksi otti tuon aika kovan dropin tuossa. Kaikki tietää varmaan mistä se johtui. Eli Trumpin kauppasodasta, mutta rupesi laskemaan jo tuossa aikaisemmin, mutta sitten tuli tämä vapautuspäivän kurssiromaus. Se oli vähän niin kuin samanlaista meininkiä kuin silloin koronakriisissä. VIX, joka mittaa siis implisiittistä volatiliteettia, eli markkinoiden riskiä, niin nousi yli 50. Viimeksi oli silloin 2020, eli niin kuin todella kova riski, oli niin kuin oikeasti paniikki päällä. Ja sittenhän Trumpi veti näitä tullipäätöksiä takaisin ja saatiin markkina palautumaan. Ja ollaan nyt sitten tuossa hivutellaan 6 000 pisteen rajaa. En ole katsonut nyt, että miten markkina aukaisi, joko ollaan menty sen yli. Mutta on palautunut tosi hyvin, mutta silti kuitenkin niin kuin year to date tuotto vuoden alusta 2%. Vaan. Mutta takas nousutrendissä kaikkien näiden liukuvien yläpuolella on S&P 500-indeksi. Voi mennä eteenpäin. Mikä on vetänyt sitten tämä nousu, eli vähän mitä Pietarikin puhui, niin teknologiaosakkeet, erityisesti AI-osakkeet on tehnyt comebackin, puolijohteet plus 15% ylöspäin, tekkiosakkeet noin 10% viimeisen kuukauden aikana. Ja sykliset osakkeet, eli mistä se kertoo? Niin se kertoo siitä, että sijoittajilla on taas niinku risk on moodi päällä. Eli tuossa niinku, jos mennään 2 kuukautta taaksepäin, niin kaikki oli niinku risk off, defensiiviset osakkeet, ja nyt on sitten niinku risk on. Ja tämä on mun mielestä niinku tämän hetken niinku trendi, mikä alkoi jo silloin, niinku viimeistään silloin koronakriisissä. Eli tavallaan kaikki niinku aiemmat indikaattorit ja muut, mitkä toimii, niin ne ei toimi enää, koska tämä markkina muuttuu niin nopeasti. 2 kuukautta sitten on täyspaniikki päällä, maailma romahtaa, tulee lama ja S&P laskee 50%, ja nyt on niinku taas niinku risk on moodi päällä. Eli nämä muuttuu niinku todella nopeasti. Ja nähdään, että defensiiviset osakkeet, terveydenhuolto viimeinen kuukausi miinuksella ja muutkin defensiiviset osakkeet menestynyt tosi huonosti. Sitten voi mennä eteenpäin. No sitten on vielä mitkä on toiminut markkinassa, eli Nasdaq 100, teknologiaosakkeet tuli vielä enemmän alas silloin tuossa huhtikuussa, mutta tässä näkyy sitten niin kuin tuo harmaa alueen suhteellinen tuottokerroin. Eli se kertoo siitä, että miten Nasdaq 100-indeksi on menestynyt suhteessa S&P 500-indeksiin. Ja tuosta helmikuusta huhtikuuhun asti teknologiaosakkeet pärjäs heikommin kuin mitä markkina yleensä. Niin kuin ihan selvästi heikommin. Katsotte tuolta viiva alaspäin. Tuossa on nopeasti 5% tukkaa S&P 500:lle parissa kuukaudessa. Ja nyt comeback. Nyt ollaan taas tuolla vuoden tasossa, niin teknologiaosakkeet on tuottanut taas paremmin. Eli teknologiaosakkeet on ollut se, joka on vetänyt tätä markkinaa ylös tämän viimeisen 2 kuukautta. Tai 1,5 kuukautta. Jes, voi mennä eteenpäin. Painakaa tuo mieleen tuo äsken. No sitten kun katsotaan eurostokseja, eli eurooppalaisia yhtiöitä, niin joulukuusta helmikuuhun niin eurooppalaiset osakkeet pärjäs jenkkiosakkeille 15%. Aivan valtava tuottoero. Jos täältä katsotte 0,85 yhteen. 15%. Ja DAXi YTD-tuotto 22%. Eli eurooppalaiset osakkeet tuotti tosi voimakkaasti. Ja mun mielestä tämä kertoo siitä, että isot instikkasijoittajat rupesivat jo ennakoiden siirtämään varoja sieltä Jenkeistä, missä oltiin tosi kovassa ylipainossa, kun markkina alkoi, niin Eurooppaan. Ja se näkyy tässä. Ja nyt sitten taas tilanne on niin kuin muuttunut. Jos mennään vielä tuohon, niin nyt taas jenkkiosakkeet on pärjännyt paremmin. Ja mistä se sitten johtuu, niin Euroopasta puuttuu nämä markkinaliiderit. Ei meillä ole yhtään markkinaliideriosaketta, ei yhtään tuommoista niin kuin tekki-osaketta. Jos verrataan Euroopan suurinta, markkina-arvoltaan suurinta osaketta ja Jenkkilän, niin paljonko on ero markkina-arvossa? 9,2. Microsoft on 9,2 kertaa suurempi kuin Sappi Euroopassa. Lähes 10-kertainen. Ja se ero ei ollut semmoinen, jos mennään taaksepäin ennen finanssikriisiä, niin se ero oli noin 5-kertainen. Ja nyt puhutaan niin ton kokoisesta firmoista, joka pystyy niin kasvamaan 10-kertaiseksi ja toisen markkina-arvo kasvaa 5-kertaiseksi. Niin meiltä puuttuu Euroopasta nämä. Me ollaan jääty tästä jälkeen ja sen takia niin pitemmällä aikavälillä Eurooppa-osakkeet on jäänyt tuotossa jälkeen. Mutta nyt on ollut hyvä jakso. Jee, voidaan mennä eteenpäin. Nautitaan siitä. Sitten vielä tuosta markkinatilanteesta. Pietarikin puhui näistä koroista. Niin tuo USA:n 10-vuotinen korko, niin tuossahan tuli tuo tosi raju tekkiosakkeiden lasku, mikä lähti siitä, että kun korot oli lähes nollasta ja sitten tultiin nopeasti ylöspäin. Yleensähän niin korkotasolla ei ole itse asiassa hirveästi vaikutusta osakkeisiin eikä tuottoihin, mutta korkotason nopealla muutoksella on. Eli kun korkotaso lähtee ylhäältä, tulee nopeasti alas, on vaikutusta. Tästä kun mennään toisinpäin, on vaikutusta. Mutta nyt kun ollaan tuolla 4-5% pyöritty, niin tavallaan sitä vaikutusta ei enää olekaan niin paljon. Ja tosiaan, että jos Jenkeissä mennään tuonne, korko menee alle 4%, niin se tarkoittaa sitä, että tuon Fedin ohjauskoron pitäisi laskea selkeästi. Se on nyt 4,25-4,5%, odotuksessa se laskee tuonne 4%. Mutta sen pitää laskea vielä selvästi alemmas, jotta Jenkeissä korko menee tuonne 3%. Tai sitten pitää tulla se taantumaskenaario, jossa kasvunäkymät heikkenee. Mutta sitähän me ei haluta, koska silloin näkyy osakekursseissa. Ja se mikä on positiivista, niin nyt tuo pitkä korko on lyhyen koron yläpuolella, koska täällähän oltiin pitkään jakso, että se oli just päinvastoin, mikä taas yleensä ennustaa taantumaa ja on huono merkki. Nyt siinä oli ehkä vähän muitakin tekijöitä. Nyt voi mennä eteenpäin. Sama Saksasta, ei ole oikeastaan mitään ihmeellistä. Täällä vaan prosentit on eri tasolla, eli 2-3% on se, missä Saksassa. Saksan tuo 10-vuotinen on, ja Euroopan keskuspankki odotetaan laskevan koron tuonne 1,75, eli sama 0,5% tiputus kuin mitä Jenkeissä. Ja täällä inflaatio alle 2%, mikä on sen EKP:n tavoitetaso. Tästä voi mennä eteenpäin. No sitten taas yksi, minkä voi ehkä painaa tuonne verkkokalvoille, niin kultaralli. Tämä ei ole siis kullan hinta, vaan tämä on kulta ETF:stä otettu tämä tuottokäyrä, niin siksi tuo asteikko tuolla on erilainen. Mutta että siis kultahan on nyt viimeisen tuosta oikeastaan 2022 vuodesta lähtien tai 2021 vuodesta lähtien niin tuplaantunut. Ja miksi? Niin se on toiminut turvasatamana, se on inflaatiosuoja, keskuspankit on hommannut aikamoisia kultavarastoja, etenkin Kiinassa, ja sitten tämmöiset geopoliittiset jännitteet, mitä nyt tuntuu, että on niin kuin joka puolella vähän liikaakin, ja sitten dollarin heikkeneminen vielä tämä viimeinen ralli. Eli sijoittajat hakee turvaa kullasta, ja nyt me nähtiin, että kun yleensä se turva haetaan sieltä niistä pitkistä valtionlainoista, niin nehän ei toiminut nyt. Eli sen takia, miksi Trumpi peruutti, oli se, että kun korot lähti voimakkaaseen nousuun, eli ruvettiin myymään jenkkien valtionlainoja. Eli ne ei ollutkaan turvasatama, sijoittajat meni tänne. Eli ehkä tavallaan just kuvaa siitä, että vaikka ollaan niin kuin risk on moodissa tällä hetkellä, niin silti tuo kullan hinnan voimakas nousu kertoo vähän jotakin muuta, eli pinnan alla kuitenkin kytee. No sitten jos mennään vielä tähän markkinaan ja siitä niin kuin tuloskauteen. Meillä on Q1-tuloskausi Jenkeissä jo ohi. Euroopassa ollaan vasta puolivälissä, mutta kuitenkin jo ihan riittävästi. Niin Jenkeissä taas hyvä tuloskausi ja sehän on tukenut tätä pörssinousua. 78% S&P 500 indeksiyhtiöistä positiivinen tulosyllätys ja Q1 tuloskasvu yli 13%. Ja koko vuodelle ennustetaan 9% tuloskasvua ja vuodelle 2026 13% tuloskasvua jenkkeihin. Ja siksi tuo PE-luku on 22. Ja se on siis forward PE-luku. Taaksepäin katsova PE-luku on 25 jenkeissä tällä hetkellä. Historiallinen, jos otetaan 5 vuotta keskiarvoa jenkeistä, se on 19,9. Eli me ollaan 10% niin kuin korkeammalla ja nyt, ja sitä selitetään kasvuvauhdilla. Ja Euroopassa, ja tästä on puhuttu siis niin kauan kuin Sijoittaja.fi on ollut olemassa, eli 11 vuotta, että Eurooppaan kannattaa sijoittaa siksi, koska täällä on matalampi PE-luku. No se on edelleenkin, taas se on 14, jenkeissä 22. Mutta mistä se johtuu? Katsokaapa Euroopan tuloskasvuennustetta. 1%. 1,6. Se on alle inflaatio. Eli tosta se tulee ton takia. Eurooppa on läkännyt pitkässä juoksussa koko ajan. Ja tuohon meidän pitäisi nyt jotakin tehdä. Mutta nyt mä uskon, että oma fiilis tällä hetkellä on, että nämä jenkkien tuloskasvuennusteet on pikkusen liian optimistisia. Ja tämä voi olla jopa niin kuin, vähän liian pessimistinen. Koska meillä on Saksaan tulossa 500 miljardin investointipaketti ja muutenkin Euroopan pitäisi nyt niin kuin tajuta, että hei, nyt meidän pitää investoida tänne ja niin kuin saada tänne kasvua. Että ei tuo niin kuin prosentin kasvu riitä, niin kuin ei yhtään mihinkään. Ja tuossa on vielä parhaita sektoreita Euroopasta, niin reitit, siis kiinteistösijoitusyhtiöt, tekki ja terveydenhuolto. Mutta yksi riski jenkkiosakkeille on tosiaan se, että koska tuo arvostuskerroin on niin korkea, ja tämä kauppasotahan ei missään nimessä ole vielä ohi. Eli ei me tiedä, mikä se, onko se 10% nyt se tariffitaso vai onko se 50% vai mitä se muuttuu niin kuin viikoittain. Mikä se tulee olemaan? Ja sen vaikutukset, se on nyt näkynyt jo Nvidian tuloksessahan se näkyy, ja se näkyy Nvidia-ohjauksessa 8 miljardia, ja se näkyy Best Buyn tuloksessa, ja se tulee näkymään nyt Q2, Q3, se kauppasota. Ja sen takia tuo tuloskasvuennuste jenkkiin on ehkä vähän liian korkea. Ja oikeastaan ainut merkittävin riski tällä hetkellä osakemarkkinoille, ja ainut, joka sitä liikuttaa tällä hetkellä, on tuo kauppasota. Yes. No niin, sitten vielä markkinasta. Eli tämä löytyy sieltä meidän Sijoittaja.fiin markkinaympäristöstä. Jos täällä on Sijoittaja.fiin, tai tiedän, että täällä on Sijoittaja.fiin jäseniä, olette käynyt lukemassa, niin tämä meidän nopeusmittarihan reagoi nykyään aika nopeasti. Se on tällä hetkellä suosiosakkeita, koska volatiliteetti on laskenut ja tilanne on ihan hyvä, mutta se myös muuttuu nopeasti sitten, kun tilanne heikkenee ja volatiliteetti nousee. Ja sieltä löytyy nuo tärkeimmät indikaattorit näkee yhdellä silmäyksellä. Voi mennä eteenpäin. No nyt sitten mennään niihin meidän salkkuihin. Eli meillä on siis eTorossa 3 salkkua. Siellä on tuo II Disruptive, joka sijoittaa disruptiivisiin teknologiaosakkeisiin. Sitten siellä on matalariskisiin globaaleihin laatuosakkeisiin sijoittava salkku ja sitten tämmöinen ETF-portfolio, joka sijoittaa eri omaisuusluokkiin. Ja ne on rakennettu siis siitä näkökulmasta, että on suomalaisten osakkeesijoittajan näkökulmasta. Jos sulla on Suomi-osakkeita, mahdollisesti jos niitä arvo-osakkeita ja muuta, niin tämä tuo just sitä, mitä sulla ei sieltä Suomi Helsingin pörssistä löydy. Ja sijoittaa siis parhaisiin teknologiaosakkeisiin maailmasta. Eli no, se on siis hyvin jenkkipainotteinen. Siellä on vähän Eurooppaakin ja on yrittänyt viime aikoina aika niin kuin tiheällä kammalla tutkia näitä eurooppalaisia teknologiaosakkeita, löytyisikö sieltä vähän lisätäydennystä ja on niin kuin muutamia sinne hankkinutkin, esimerkiksi pilvipalveluyhtiöitä, mitkä ei ole näistä jenkkiteknoista niin riippuvaisia, mutta että kyllä sitä niin kuin aika tiukkaan saa seuloa, että sieltä löytyy. Että se on jenkkipainotteinen, mutta strategia mikä on. Sijoittaa disruptiivisen teknologiaosakkeisiin, sillä ei niin kuin hirveästi vaihella niitä painoja. Et jos sieltä joku ei ole enää disruptiivinen teknologiaosake, tipahtaa pois, jos tulee uusia tilalle ja näin. Ja tavallaan se sijoittaa niihin megatrendisektoreihin, just tekoälyosakkeisiin, internet, digitalisaatio, kaikki nämä tärkeimmät teknologiatrendit. Tuossa näkyy vähän sen tuottohistoria, tosi hyviä vuosia, mutta sitten tuo 2022 oli tekkiosakkeille tosi heikko. Jes, voi mennä eteenpäin. 5,8 vuotta trackia. Mä en tiedä, onkohan tämä live vai onko tässä se tuo 2019 vuosi mukana, mutta että plus 15 pinnaa vajaa 6 vuotta. Tuossa näkyy sen suurimpia sijoituksia tällä hetkellä. Eli Broadcom, Nvidia on just sitä puolijohdesektoria, tekoälyosakkeita. Niitä lisättiin tuossa maaliskuussa, niin nyt kun on noussut voimakkaasti, niin ne on sitten tuon salkun suurimpia. Mutta sitten sieltä löytyy kaikki tärkeimmät tekkiosakkeet. Ja teknologiaosakkeethan on pitkässä juoksussa tarjonnut parempaa tuottoa kuin esimerkiksi S&P 500-indeksi. Mutta täytyy silloin hyväksyä se korkeampi riski. Eli silloin kun on tämmöisiä, niin kuin vaikka että korko nousee voimakkaasti, niin silloin tekkiosakkeet ottaa enemmän tukkaan. Tai sitten tässä 2025 dropissa, niin tekkiosakkeet otti enemmän hittiä. Mutta on myös semmoisia markkinajaksoja, kun teknologiaosakkeet pärjää paremmin, vaikka olisikin laskumarkkina. Mutta pitemmässä juoksussa kovempi kasvu ja parempi tuotto. Ja ehkä sitten semmoisia niin kuin omia niin kuin oppeja tästä, niin että niin kuin tekkiosakkeissa tuo rebalanssointi ei ole niin kuin paras strategia. Eli silloin tulee myytyä. Esimerkiksi Nvidiaa, sitä ei olisi kannattanut rebalanssoida. Mulla tuli sieltä tuo take profit 1000%. Eli ei sitä olisi kannattanut sieltä niin kuin rebalanssoida salkusta, vaan sen tuottojen juosta. Eli parhaat tuottaa niin kuin ihan massiivisen paljon. Ja sitten jossain, niin kuin, yleensä se johtuu siitä, että siellä se disruptio siinä yhtiössä tai osakkeessa, se niin kuin katoaa. Jos sä semmoista sitä rebalanssoit, eli se laskee ja painat lisää, niin sä painat sitä, mikä on se huono. Ja sitten oikeastaan just oma, niin kuin sanoin tuosta Pietari-esityksen jälkeen, että kun mulla on se arvosijoittamisen niin kuin mindsetti, mikä ei ole niin kuin tekkisijoittamisessa kauhean hyvä, niin sitten niin kuin, siis oikeasti tuntuu tuskalliselta painaa ostonappulaa, jos PE-luku on 100. Niin sen kanssa on joutunut tuskailemaan. Ja tosiaan tämän portfolion niin kuin siis se kiertonopeus on paljon matalampi, koska eihän nuo niin kuin Applet ja Amazonit nämä sieltä mihinkään ole ainakaan tässä aikana muuttunut ja vaihtunut. No sitten toinen strategia on tämä Quality Stocks. Siellä on nyt tällä hetkellä 30 globaalia laatuosaketta. Ja tässä mä painotan enemmän niin kuin matalaa riskiä. Okei, pitkässä juoksussa defensiiviset matalaa riskiset osakkeet on tuottanut paremmin, mutta se ei ole tässä niin kuin pääpaino. Ja niin kuin näkyy tuossa 2022, kun tekkiosakkeet tuli sen 40 pinnaa alas, niin nämä tuli 14 pinnaa alas. Ja tässä ei myöskään ole isoa niin kuin vaihtoa. Siis totta kai tutkitaan, että ne laatukriteerit täyttyy meidän osaketyökalun pisteytykselle ja että ne on niin kuin defensiivisiä edelleen. Mutta että ei ole mitään turhaa kaupankäyntiä tässä. Yes. Tässä näkyy sitten, mitä siellä on. Niin kuin suurimmat sijoitukset ja kaikkihan voi käydä katsomassa ne osakkeet sieltä tuolta salkusta suoraan, ne näkyy siellä. Ja niin kuin defensiiviset osakkeet, niin kuin katsottiin siinä, jos muistatte sitä alkupään esitystä, niin nehän ei ole pärjännyt nyt niin kuin viime aikoina huippuhyvin. Että ja olen jonkun verran tehnyt tuommoista niin kuin muutoksia siihen, jotta tuo salkku pärjäisi paremmin. Oracle on siellä, joka ei ole ehkä niin kuin klassinen defensiivinen niin kuin päivittäiskulutussektoriosake. On siis defensiivinen, mutta ei ole ehkä niin kuin semmoinen klassinen valinta. Ja mitäs muuta vielä tästä? No, taisinkin sanoa just tuonne, että niin kuin näissä voimakkaissa laskuissa, esimerkiksi tänä vuonna, kun oli se voimakas lasku, niin tuon kuukausitasolla näissä oli 2% laskut, eli tämä on pärjännyt niissä ihan hyvin. Yes, voi mennä vielä eteenpäin, mulla alkaa varmaan aikakin kohta loppu. No sitten on tämä ETF-portfolio, joka on siis, tässä on hyvin vähän tapahtuu niin kuin muutoksia, mutta tämä on tavallaan niin kuin yhdistelmärahaston korvike. Eli täällä on osakkeiden paino ollut noin 60%, sitten on korkosijoituksia, sitten on reittejä ja on pärjännyt itse asiassa tänä vuonna yllättävän hyvin, vaikka korot ei ole mitenkään erityisen hyvin tuottanut. Ja on semmoinen niin kuin melko matala riskinen, mutta aika niin kuin, noita voitollisia viikkoja on ihan hyvin tuo yli 60%. Ja selkeästi niin kuin tavoitellaan niin kuin matalampaa riskiä kuin osakemarkkinoilla, koska siellä on sitä korkosijoituksia. Ja tosiaan nuo viime vuosina nousseet korothan on semmoinen, mikä vaikuttaa korkosijoituksiin heikosti, koska jos korot nousee, eli korko yield nousee, niin korkosijoitusten hinnat laskee. Eli se on vaikuttanut tähän salkkuun ja kaikkiin muihinkin korkosijoituksiin, jos on korkorahastoja, niin niihin heikosti. Ja silloin kun me aloitettiin tämä, niin eToron ETF-valikoima oli tosi suppea. Siis ei ollut hirveästi Eurooppaan listattuja noita ETF:iä, mutta nyt se on valikoima itse asiassa tosi hyvä. Ja sen takia tästä pystyy rakentamaan ihan järkevän näköisen salkun. Siellä on laatuyhtiöitä suurimmalla painolla, sitten on just näitä globaaleja näitä valtionlainoja, eurostoksia, eurooppalaisia osakkeita, kehittyviä markkinoita, tekkiä, Japania. Oikeastaan kaikki päämarkkinat löytyy tästä. Oliko mulla vielä siellä? Eli ne on, ja aika taitaa olla aika lailla tapissa, mutta siis nuo ilmeisesti esitykset jaetaan sitten eteenpäin, niin tuosta pääsee katsomaan niitä salkkuja, ja tuosta voi painaa mieleen tietenkin nuo salkkujen nimet, ja hyödyntää sitten meidän edut, Sijoittaja.fin edut, jos haluaa rekisteröityä eToroon. Oliko siellä vielä? Miten? Jos ei ole Sijoittaja.fi tuttu tai meidän jäsenyyteen, niin sieltä löytyy noita meidän sijoittajan työkaluja, osaketyökalu markkinoiden seurantaan ja meikäläisen analyysiin. Jes, kiitoksia.
Kello on 17:49, niin pidetään noin vartin tauko, niin jatketaan tässä 5 sitten tulee lauteille Dov eTorolla.
Okay, everyone can hear me? Yes? Great. So, very nice to meet everyone. My name is Dov Schonkopf. I'm a senior account manager at eToro for the Nordics. And we're so happy to be here. We want to thank Sijoittaja for hosting the event. We want to thank Pietari and Tapio also for being here. And it's great to meet you, all of you. And today I will speak about business update from eToro. Okay. Anybody here heard of eToro? Raise of hands. Great. So you must know, and whoever that doesn't know, our mission since day one is to bring the world of investments that used to belong to hedge fund managers, banks, to the palm of your hand, to make it accessible for everybody. Oh, let me just stay close. This year we're celebrating 18 years. Since 2007, eToro was founded. We have all these milestones, launching copy trading, introducing Bitcoin, adding smart portfolios, launching ISA in the UK and eToro Money in 2022, and of course, the great milestone of an IPO in 2025 a couple of weeks ago. At the moment, we have over $16 billion on assets under management. We are operating in 75 countries, over 1,500 employees. 70% of our clients are in Europe. Now, there are multiple reasons why clients are choosing eToro. 3 here are just a few, but worth mentioning. Multi-asset platform. We have a global footprint. And the social aspect of eToro, which I'll touch later on. I'm sorry, I like to walk, and this doesn't work. Okay. Award-winning broker year after year. We're winning awards all over the world. And we have global presence. We have offices from the US, UK, Denmark. Now we opened an office in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi, Germany, Australia, and all over the world. And of course, local regulation everywhere we go. One-stop shop to diversify your portfolio. If you're interested in stocks, if you're interested in commodities, if it's ETF or crypto, you can find everything on eToro in one portfolio. Over 20 exchanges listed on eToro, over 100 crypto assets, and over 3,000 popular investors. So since 2013, eToro has introduced Bitcoin. Anyone knows here when was Bitcoin created? Bitcoin was created 2009. 2013 was very early for a platform to introduce Bitcoin. And eToro was one of the early birds. If you would have invested then in Bitcoin, then that would be a good result. On eToro, we have something that's called Smart Portfolio, which Sijoittaja is partnering with us. They have 3 smart portfolios on eToro. Smart Portfolio is basically like an ETF, thematic index that is focusing in one sector. So you can find a smart portfolio for gaming. You can find a smart portfolio for medtech. Or you can find a smart portfolio that imitates Bill Gates' investments. Or you can find smart portfolios like Sijoittaja has that focuses in disruptive technology and more. We have over 100 smart portfolios on the platform. Copying them doesn't cost anything. There's no monthly fee on this. And it's very clear to see on a smart portfolio how they did in the past. You see it year after year. On eToro, we have something that's called Popular Investor. Copy trading, like Pietari. So these are people you can copy. You can see their history. You can see what they invest in. You can ask them questions, and they answer. And this is a very, very informative, and it gives you as an investor a lot of strength. Because if you invest with a hedge fund or in a bank, and you want to see in real time, what they're doing, what they invest in, what do they do with your money, how did they do in the past year, if you want to get out of it, if you want to have your funds back, how long would that take? Everything on eToro is very transparent. You can go to any popular investor and see exactly what he invests in, exactly how much he did in 2022, 2023, 2024, and with all this information, get to a better decision if this person suits you or not. And with one click, you can copy this person. With one click, you can go out. And this gives you a lot of power, and this gives the popular investor a lot of motivation to show you good results month after month. Pioneering social trading and copy trading. On eToro, you can speak to other people. You can copy other people. You can help other people. You can see what they invest in. And in addition to technical analysis and fundamental analysis that you want to do, to know what the crowd thinks gives a lot of strength. These are few of eToro's top popular investors in Finland. Of course, Pietari is one of them. We have global analysts all over the world with local languages. One of them is Jakob, who's here and will speak soon. There he is. eToro in Finland. So at the moment we have 22 companies listed on eToro, and that is about to change as well. We're going to have more. We have 3 partner portfolios with Sijoittaja and 13 popular investors in Finland. And we introduced also local trading and investing in euros. So you can deposit in euro and invest in euros, in euro stocks if you wish. The recent year and a half was very meaningful for eToro. We introduced a lot of products and a lot of features that was in the waiting list for a long time. Trading in euro, as I said, and depositing in euro and trading in euro. Stock lending, meaning that if you have a portfolio of investments, you can lend your stocks while you have it in your portfolio and gain extra interest. You can transfer in and out in investment portfolios. So if you have an investment portfolio in another bank or another platform, you can transfer this portfolio into eToro without closing the positions, with no extra cost on eToro's end. And reoccurring investments. You have a specific asset you want to invest in, automatically, time after time, you can set up a recurring investment. eToro Club. When you join eToro, you can get, these are nice sponsorships we have. If anybody is into games, this is something we offer to our top tier clients in Europe. So when you join eToro, we have 5 tiers of club memberships: silver, gold, platinum, platinum plus, and diamond. When you join the club, it doesn't cost anything. It all depends on the funds you have invested. So once you reach a certain level, you get into the club and you get upgraded, and you get all the benefits from interest rates on your funds, on your available cash. You can get interest all up to 4.3% once you're diamond. You get a free subscription to news outlets. You get free tickets to sporting events. And of course, no withdrawal fees once you get to a top tier, to the platinum level, and more. This was me. We'll be more than happy to answer questions if you have. About eToro, about copy trading, what it's all about. Yes?
Can I just ask about fees on
Sure.
eToro? So, for example, I do copy trading. I recently started doing it, copying Pietari out of some people out there as well. But how does it work for fees? I mean, it's probably stated on the website. I was too lazy to read it. But is there like an eToro fee? There's probably trading fees when the people like copy trade the stocks. But if you just explain the fees.
Sure, absolutely. So when you open a position manually, a regular position, let's say you open Tesla or privately any asset, it's a $1 when you open, $1 when you close, flat fee. When you copy someone, it's free of cost. When you copy someone like Pietari, it's free. You don't pay any monthly fee, no specific fee when you open the position, it's free of cost. And on crypto, it's 2% on crypto positions. 1% when you open, 1% when you close. So all in all, 2% crypto. That's the fees. Anything else?
Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Just on the currency. So when I opened the account, I think it asked me to open or the default was a US dollar account, which I then did. So I converted money into USD and transferred it across. And then once I did that, it allowed to have the euro account as well. But I'm just trying to get my head around. So for example, when I copy the likes of Pietari, and if he has more sort of European stocks, does it make a difference, or should I be doing that via the euro account, or am I then taking the FX risk as well if I'm doing it via the USD account? That's something.
Right. So copying is valid only through the USD account.
So copying you can only
Yes.
do the USD.
Yes, because it can be euro positions in there or USD positions in there. So.
Okay.
That's via the USD. But if you choose via the euro account to open a specific euro position, then you save on the exchange fee. So it's euro to euro. Yeah, in that regard. That's it. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. If anybody has questions, please feel free. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Jakob Christensen, and I am the market analyst for eToro. I'm particularly covering the Nordic region. But I'm part of a wider team we have at eToro. So we basically have analysts that are covering a wide range of regions. So we have analysts that are focused on Spain, UK, Italy, US, Romania. We basically got almost every market covered by our analyst. As an eToro user, what you can do is you can actually go and follow us as analysts. And what we do is we put out on our feed on the eToro platform, we put out news, analysis, insights, maybe investment ideas to the platform. And as an eToro user, you can follow us. So even if you have particular interest in, let's say, Spain, you can find the Spanish analyst. You might want to follow him. Then you can get some insights into what's going on the local market in Spain. You can find me on J West. That's my user on the eToro platform. Then we're also doing a bit of stuff in order to help retail investors, in order to educate them and help them understand the financial markets. We have a number of podcasts We have one in Danish, so I'm not sure how many here that want to listen to that one. But we also have a global podcast that's out weekly. So if you go to Spotify, all your favorite iTunes or podcast or whatever you use, you should be able to find these podcasts under eToro. Okay, and what I want to talk to you about today is basically give you sort of eToro's market view, how we are seeing the market at the moment and what we are watching. And I think 2025, it's all about Trump so far, right? We have seen, I think you all remember the Liberation Day, 2nd of April, where Trump from Rose Garden at the White House showed this magnificent sheet of all the tariffs, and the market sort of just panicked in the day after. I think what really changed it about a week after, where Trump were out and doing a 90-day delay of those tariffs, that was actually not so much what happened in the stock market. It could have been what happened in the bond market. So in the US, there's a massive bond market. It's around 30 trillion. It's around half the size of the US equity market. So really a big market. And once they start seeing that interest were going up on the bonds that needs to be covered by the US government, that they sort of pivoted and changed their approach and gave that 90 days tariff delay. Then later on, we saw again Trump being out and challenging the independence of the Federal Reserve. Something that's very important for the investor community is that you have a central bank, the Fed, that is independent, that is running its appropriate monetary policy, and it's not being controlled by the Fed. And when the market starts sensing that the Trump, he put a bit of pressure on Fed in order for them to lower the interest rate, the market sort of didn't like that either and took a hit down. Again, Trump had to come out and say, no, don't worry, I will not interfere with the Fed. Again, market liked that, to hear that, and we saw this rebound. We also seen the US-China trade reset initially. A lot of tariffs on China. We saw this escalation in the trade war. And suddenly it was all reset again. And market really liked that. Tariffs got pushed from 145% down to 30%. So it was really a relief for the market to see that. Then the latest we had was where he threatened EU with a 50% tariff, only for a few days after to delay it again. And so there's come this expression in the market now that some investors are looking at that's called the Taco trade. And it stands for Trump always chickens out. And it's basically every time we have seen some bold statement, seeing a reaction from the market, we have seen that those statements have been taken back, or at least softened a few days after, a few weeks after. But I think the interesting point is here to see that actually the market today, if we look at the US market, is 4-5% above what it was prior to the announcement in the Rose Garden, prior to the tariffs were introduced. And we have to keep in mind that those tariffs are likely, the delay, the 90 days delay, going to run out here in July. So we just need to keep that in mind, that I think within the next few weeks, market going to start talking much more about these tariffs again, and whether some trade deals actually can be agreed before this 90 days delay run out. This is just to show sort of the level of uncertainty that the tariffs gave to the market. I mean, it's not COVID days, it's not uncertainty as we saw it in 2008, but it really illustrates that market kind of really didn't like this whole announcement about the tariffs and all the uncertainty that have been around sort of what's going on politically in the White House. Now this is back from April, so I think if we looked at it, it would have gone down a bit now. So markets are getting calmer. Markets are, I think, partly because they're seeing that a lot of these statements are coming out, they will be adjusted if they have too much effect. But I think while we have seen the stock market sort of regaining and getting back to to the levels it was prior to the tariffs, one thing that's sort of still sticking, that is the dollar that have weakened. And I think what I see for a lot of retail investors I speak to is that they still experience that their portfolio are down when they look at it, which many do in either euros or Danish kroner or Swedish kroner. And a lot of the explanation is basically the weakening we have seen in the dollar. And it's basically been many of the same statements that have weakened the dollar, a lot of the uncertainty around trade that have weakened the dollar, the challenge of the Fed's independence also weakened the dollar. But while the dollar have only partly regained that. So I think that does explain why investors, even they see S&P 500 is back up, their portfolio is still potentially in negative. And that brings me to this, because I think this is basically what a lot of this tariffs also ties back to, and that is the debt levels that we have in the US. So $37 trillion, 30,000 billion US dollars. So quite a big debt that the US government is having. That's it's more than 100,000 per capita. It's more than 300,000 per taxpayer. So it's quite a big debt when you look at it that way. And the market was sort of hoping that with the new administration that this was something that would be dealt with, that we were going on a new, more sustainable way and addressing this debt by reducing the budget deficit. And those were sort of one of the items to help out with that. I think it's sort of been partly successful. It probably haven't really delivered yet what many have hoped. Probably many investors hope that there could be a bigger cut in the budget. And then we have just seen now that the budget bill that are going through the Senate at the moment, that Trump is actually now looking to increase the deficit. So by giving a lot of tax reduction and also cuts on spending, but net it's actually gonna increase the federal budget deficit, while many have hoped that finally we will see somebody who actually will reduce it, actually will reduce the debt and sort of bring it on a more sustainable path. But this is not really at least what the White House is communicating at the moment. And that debt brings me to this, which is basically what we've seen is that then the bond yields have really gone up. We saw how they went up when we can all remember back in 2022 when central banks started putting up the policy rate, and that also spiked up the long interest rate of the government bonds. But now it's almost been a year, and we started the rate cycle cut about a year ago. ECB have cut half. They've gone from 4 to basically 2%. I think today there was an announcement, so they should be down to 2% now. But we still see that the long rates are still high. They're not coming down to that level we saw before we were sending the short rates sending them up. And a lot of that has to do with this government spending. We particularly see it in the US right now. Investors, they demand a higher compensation because they sense there's a bit more credit risk with the US government debt. We also see it in Germany. We've seen recently the big fiscal package they're coming out with, and the spending they're going to do, and they're going to do that with government with bond funded through bonds. So we have just seen that the bonds are coming up to levels and are staying at levels that we haven't seen for a long time. And playing into that, we also, when we look at the stock market for Europe and the US, then there's really been a change this year. We have had the last few years where it was always all about the US. US were really leading, and S&P delivering 25% return in 2023, 2024. Europe not reaching those levels. But so far this year, it's actually Europe that are sort of ahead in the game. And we do see that as well among some retail investors, that we have this survey at eToro, it's a quarterly survey and asked 10,000 retail investors. And when we asked them in the end of 2024, it was a majority that was for the best returns going to come from the US. But here, after the first 3 months of this year, we can sort of see a change. Most investors still anticipate that the US, but a significant part of investors are now also start believing in Europe as where the best return will come from over the next few years. And it's also something that's observed among institutional investors and professional investors, that there is just start being more focus on Europe and less focus on US. Then I wanted to talk a bit about those magnificent 7 stocks that in 2023, 2024 drove a lot of the returns in the stock market. So these are the big 7, and I believe they count for roughly around 30% of the whole S&P when you look at the market value. So quite some big companies in terms of their market value. And what we saw in 2024 was that they were delivering really, really strong earnings growth. So the underlying earnings were really strong. If we go back, a lot of it is also Nvidia that had a stellar year in 2024. So, but what we are seeing going forward when we look at the consensus estimates of these magnificent 4 is that there is sort of a slowdown in the earnings. We are not gonna expect to see what we saw in 2024, and it's gonna be more aligned with the general S&P 500. That doesn't mean that they're not profitable. That doesn't mean that they're not grow. But I do think we need to get used to seeing a bit lower levels in terms of their earnings. And I think that is something that likely also could start stabilizing the stock price in the coming period from here. Then I just wanted to jump quickly back to sort of the whole tariff thing, because inflation is very interesting at the moment, because I think in the Eurozone we sort of got inflation under control. Now I put May 2.1. That was actually a consensus estimate. The number came out at 1.9, so better than that, and that actually means that now the Eurozone as a whole is sort of down below the 2% target from ECB. The US, on the other hand, is a bit of a different story, because we are seeing that their inflation as well are coming down. It has been a bit more sticky in the US inflation. They've had some harder to control, particularly the service inflation in the US. But I think sort of the little bit what I call the wild card with the US is sort of the tariffs, because we don't know from here what's going to happen with the tariffs. So right now we got the 10% tariffs is in place. We got 10% on all countries. We got 30% on China. That shouldn't drive inflation too much, but it potentially could drive a little bit. And particularly because it's sort of the goods inflation that haven't really before seen any, that haven't had too much inflation. Then if we start seeing this tariff, and particularly some of the tariff that could come after the 90-day delays, that they could start hitting some of these goods. For instance, Nike shoes done in Vietnam is produced there, and I believe the tariff suggested there was around 40%. So that would be a big hit, for instance, for a company like Nike. I mean, of course, also for everyone who's buying Nike shoes. But this is still sort of, again, the wild card, what happened with inflation. And that's also why the US just have a harder time putting down the interest rate. So we have done it in Europe. We really have basically halving our the interest rate from ECB, whereas in the US we have had a number of cuts, but sort of the path from here to really come down, it's much more foggy, and I think the central bank are just waiting to see, will this inflation come under control, or can there be sort of some inflation coming back from these tariffs? And yeah, this one I just wanted to finish the presentation on, because there's a lot of things going back and forth in the market, and as particularly as an analyst, you can really get caught up in all the small details. But I think at the end of the day, this is what matters, right? This is the reason why we invest. This is the long-term game, and just to show, this is a global diversified portfolio, basically buying the global stock market, if giving you almost 100% over the last 5 years. That's what I had to you today, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Sieltä olkaa hyvä.
Timo Heikkilä, kysymys. Näytit sitä kullan arvoa. Sehän on se niin korkealle, ettei tahtonut tuohon valkokankaalle sopia. Nyt se on pilvissä kohta. Mitä tapahtuu, kun Trump tekee jonkun tempun, niin kun se tulee näin, niin mitä tapahtuu sen jälkeen?
Niin jos Trump tekee temppuja, niin sehän on vaikuttanut siihen kullahintaan ja sitä, että kullahinta on noussut.
Eli jonkun temppu, mikä vaikuttaa tänne alaspäin.
En tiedä sitten. Mutta nyt se on mennyt toisinpäin. Kun Trump on tehnyt temppuja, niin se kullahinta on noussut voimakkaasti. Sitten pitäisi olla joku semmoinen että sijoittajat alkaisi katsomaan jotakin muuta turvasatamaa tai tuo inflaatio menisi niin kuin nollaan tai jotakin, mutta ei ihan heti onneksi semmoista niin tuommoista.
Onko ollut näkyvissä nyt, kun Trump on tehnyt näitä juttujaan koko ajan, niin markkinat kumminkin on rauhoittunut, koska ne on tottunut siihen, että ne ottaa ihan tarkkaan.
No on siis just näin, ja sitten tavallaan kun lähti sen taantumaan pelkuttu, että oli niin isot investointipankit, niin pystyi jo niin ennusteli siihen, että meillä on varma taantuma tai lama. Joo. Ja sitten kun vedettiin ne tariffit pois ja muuta, tai mitä jäädytettiin, niin sitten tuli tavallaan, otettiin se taantumaskenaario pois ja sitten osakkeet on niin palautunut.
Eli niin sanotusti lyhyesti, että älä ota tosissaan, mitä se puhuu.
No joo, mutta se on silti se suuri riski, että en vieläkään, niin kuin tässäkin sanottiin, niin tiedetä, että mitä sieltä tulee, miten se sitten lopulta vaikuttaa kuluttajakäyttäytymiseen, mutta nyt tässä tehnyt data ei ole siirtynyt vielä kovaan dataan. Kuluttajaluottamus on ollut tosi heikko, nyt se on vähän palautunut, mutta se ei ole vielä näkynyt noissa niin kovissa luvuissa.
Näyttää siltä, että niin reagoi niihin markkinoihin tavallaan aina jo, tai ei. Vähän mihinkä ne menee, niin sitten niin vaihdetaan suuntaan.
Joo, se on kyllä, se on ollut just tämmöistä.
Thank you. Let's continue with the questions after the panel discussion, yes. And then we can have more time for that. So all the panelists, please come to stage and then let's start.
No niin, aloitellaan paneelilla, ja paneeli on englanniksi, mutta lopussa sitten meillä on aikaa kysyä suomeksi ja englanniksi, että keneltä haluttekaan. So the opening question I have for all of you, if we go in terms like that, how do you see investors' attitudes towards the risk today, like given how their behavior has changed in the recent years? Do you think that investors are more cautious or more like risk tolerant at the moment?
I think there is quite some risk appetite, also among retail investors, but I think it's a sort of a small segment of retail investors. For instance, this whole big sort of buy we have seen, if you look at a lot of the Magnificent Seven that have been bought since basically during this year, where they initially didn't do so well up until around April, we saw that the big Magnificent Seven stock didn't do well, and then they sort of recovered. And a lot of that recovery is by retail investors that are, in that sense, I think, taking on some risk. But they have also many retail investors that have very good experience in doing that. They have on several occasions sort of participated in this buying the dips. So when they see that these stocks are going down, then they buy them up and have made some good return to that. But I think it's also important to notice that sort of this buy the dip strategy doesn't not always work. I mean, because at the same time we also see a lot of like hedge funds that are actually staying out of these trades. So they are very driven by, I would say, retail investors that like to take on some risk.
It's an interesting question because what I see the pattern is less more people wanting risk, but people want more for their money. If in the past they were happy with 8 to 10% average a year with S&P or with anything else, it's now they're looking to beat the market. So when you have people like Pietari who's beating the market and crypto coming in, so people want to make more with their money, but still control the risk.
Yeah, so I think that the big investors, the institutional investors, are still more like a risk-off mode. That's my feeling. The big hedge funds and those sold most of the assets, but the retail investors, they are in the risk-on mode at the moment. That's my feeling, and you can also see it in the charts that I showed.
I think like many investors, they've been conditioned by the behavior of the market over the past few years, that the market always goes up. And whenever there's a dip, you need to buy it. I mean, this has been the pattern of the past 5 years, and I think that's why people are pretty bullish. Many retail investors are bullish. Now, I don't think that this pattern is always going to continue. So I think it's a bit dangerous to always kind of look at the past and then condition your behavior on what worked in the past. You have to kind of think about what's the next thing that's going to happen.
Thank you. Very interesting and opening comments from all. And maybe if we continue with Pietari straight, though, this is all for you, like very shortly, that what kind of is like Finnish investor from your perspective? Like what are maybe the few strengths compared to the average and weaknesses then, if you look at purely Finns as investors?
Well, I would say that one feature I find kind of curious about the Finnish investment market is that how much money there is in the mutual funds run by the banks. So it seems like most retail investors have the majority of their kind of actively managed assets with the banks. It's kind of natural in the sense that you have a relationship with your bank, you trust the bank, but I also think it's probably not like the best approach in general, because you could go either down the route that you believe that the market is like efficient, you cannot beat the market, then you just buy the cheapest index fund that you can. Or otherwise, if you want to like go for the actively managed strategies, then I don't think that the banks, like the big traditional banks, I don't think they have like the best, most innovative, like the most unique strategies. So I think that's one thing that the Finnish investor should learn more about, like what kind of other platforms are out there. Like eToro is a good example, like a new innovative way of offering like unique strategies to the market.
So same question. Okay, so like Pietari said, the bank, Finland is really bank orientated still. So we have more than 110 billion in cash and cash accounts. And then you said about mutual funds, the Finnish people have 179 billions in mutual funds. So we have 300 billion in cash and in banks mutual funds. So what we could do is invest more in stocks and other assets, the modern way.
Exactly. This is very interesting when you see actually the Nordic portfolios. So how do we differ in good and bad?
I think I can't really speak to the Finnish investor, but more to sort of the Nordic investor. And I do think there is some similarities across sort of the Nordic region in how the retail investors approach it. First of all, I think it's a retail investor quite experienced compared to what we see in other markets. There's also a higher proportion of the population that are actually investors or are owning stocks. So I think we see quite mature behavior among the Nordic investors. We see less risk generally in the Nordics than I do, for instance, in the UK or in France or Spain. You can see much more crypto there. You can see much more of the high-flying tech stocks that are there. Whereas generally in the Nordic, I see more of a bit more conservative investment profile.
Do you have something to add, Dov?
Well, I always have something.
Okay.
No, but I agree with everything that's being said. But there's also, with inflation going up, times have changed. People that used to rely on the pension Today, mostly younger ones, they know it might not be enough. And having the funds locked in the bank, in an index, a cheap index, may not be enough to live off the pension. So we do see more curiosity to open up, maybe not in the bank, in other places, to see how they can get to that point with enough to be sustainable.
Yeah, good answer. Then we have a question about the AI, as many are using it more and more. So do you personally use it as part of your investing? And if not, why so? And if yes, how do you use it? So AI.
Yeah, I use it as a tool mostly for background, so finding information. And I think what is good at is actually giving me access to resources, and then I then can go and follow. But I haven't been in and asked what stock to invest in, but maybe I should give that a go. How about Dov?
So we saw AI booming towards the end of 2023, and 2024 was the AI year. And then now we see it coming down. And a lot of people already then was thinking and asking, is this a bubble? Is this for long term? How they should look at it? Well, companies around the world, and the biggest, Mag 8 and all of them, they're taking it very seriously, investing billions of dollars in AI, which we may only see the fruit in the upcoming years or in the future. As it looks now, of course, not an investment advice, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. AI is here to stay. It's already implemented, it's already in here. If it's governments, if it's companies, wherever you go, wherever you see. So that's how I look at it. It's going forward.
Yeah, and the question was, am I using the AI?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm using AI because we have developed the Sijoittaja AI, so which is a combination of our unique data and our score that we score stocks. So we are combined this and the ChatGPT language model. So I'm using that quite a lot, and I think the AI is democratizing investing, because we retail small investors, we have now really special to get the information really fast and really well positioned when using AIs. But the problem is that they always give you an answer, and the answer always looks good, but you really have to have a
Scratch it.
you never know that is this really true or not. I think that's the problem at the moment, and the language models are not good with data. So if you ask them simple questions about the data, they don't know how to use it, because they are developed to read text. Yeah.
So I use AI for a little bit of background research on companies. If I don't know a company very well, then I might just ask AI to what are the risks of investing with this company and things like that. But it's really just for background. I mean, I don't ultimately make any investment decision based off AI, because I don't think they are good enough yet. They might be in a few years, but not yet. And I think the reason for that is that the training data that these AI models use, it doesn't include the analyst reports. So they cannot yet think like an analyst. And also, like the stock analysts, they have some private information on top of the public information set that the AI models use. So for example, they'll be talking to the management, they'll be talking to the suppliers of the company, they'll be talking to other people in the industry, and that is kind of extra information which you get from oral sources or internal company sources, and these models don't have access to that data. So I don't see yet that AI can produce a compelling investment opinion. Maybe in a few years it might, but not yet.
Thank you, and this is actually continuing that corner, next one is very interesting, and you can also debate and challenge each other. So Europe versus USA, which currently offers better opportunities for investors? Pietari, you can continue.
I have a very strong opinion about this. I think that Europe is a much better place to invest in than the US at the moment. For two reasons, really. Number one is the valuation. Europe is a lot cheaper. And the second one is the economic trend. So if you look at why the US outperformed so much over the past few years, or the past 5 years, or 10 years, or 15 years, that was really because of the massive government deficit expansion that took place in the US. The government deficit in the US is just massive. It's too big. They cannot expand it anymore. It has to come down at some point. Otherwise, they will have a debt crisis. In Europe, the situation is better. Yes, there are some countries which have too much debt, but on average, the situation is much better than in the US. So that's why European governments, they can do more fiscal expansion over the coming years. Germany is already doing that. I think maybe more governments will do it over the coming years. So when you combine these two things, valuation and the trend, I think it's like a killer cocktail. I really see this is one of my core theses and core convictions.
Yeah, so should we have some kind of debate now? Because of course I'm also pro-Europe at the moment. I cannot say I'm a pro-US because of this. Yeah, because of this political situation. But why the debt in US is a problem? It's not a problem. They have their own central bank. With one button they can change the debt. So it's not a problem, the debt. It's only problem when you see it in inflation or rising interest rates. So that's the problem when it affects like that. So remember that. And I don't think the deficit of US is going to affect to the stock market. I mean the biggest companies in US, because what affects that is the EPS growth. So if the best companies are still in US, but I'm also pro-Europe. I don't know, I think we are on the same page still.
I mean, it's a possible scenario. I mean, you can never be sure about anything in the markets. You have to position for like the probabilities that you see in the market. Like for example, I don't necessarily see like a debt crisis for the US on the horizon. I think that's just too extreme. I think it's just going to be like a kind of gradual like process of Europe doing a little bit better, the US doing a little bit worse. And I think that's going to kind of drive the performance delta. Also, I feel that the US dollar is still overvalued, and I think it's going to come down more, and that's going to help European stocks to outperform versus US stocks.
So regarding like maybe stock picking, you would pick Europe, but in index-wise, maybe US as a long term, if you would just choose between SP 500 and Euro Stock 600. If you would need to choose between like general index instead of stock picking. I know it's a bit like out of your because you do only stock picking, so in that sense it's like unfair question to you.
Well, I would say like even between the indices, I would still pick the Euro stocks over the S&P because of the currency first. So there's more domestic exposure to Europe, like in the European index. And if I think that the euro is going to strengthen against the dollar, then by default I will prefer the European index over the US index. And I also think that the sector composition of the European index, I prefer it to the US index.
Yeah, good. So what think you, Europe or US?
Maybe just to add on the US, I think what they are seeing now is just those quite expensive valuations, right? We are seeing the companies are expensive relatively to how much money they are generating. And if we compare that, for instance, to a US government bond, they have 30-year now hit 5%. And that actually means that there is not really a premium anymore by investing in US stocks over investing in US bonds. You basically get around the same, around 5%, at least over the next year. And at the same time, at least if to see the US stocks perform very well, for me, I think we need to see really strong earnings growth, and that I'm a little bit more doubtful around, particularly now with potentially the tariffs coming in and how that will impact the economy. So I think Europe is an interesting place to look, but it's also a place that is getting more crowded. I think we have seen that over the first 5 months of the year, how a lot of investors have positioned themselves in Europe now. So it's not as interesting as it was, I would say, in the beginning of the year. But if I should choose between the two, I think Europe is the place to be right now.
You pause. No, but you always have something to comment. Something, few words.
Not this time.
All right. Yeah. Otherwise, somebody might keep you live as it's recorded. So.
I'm Switzerland.
Yeah.
Good. Then we have a few personal questions as well for each. So Pietari, how do you structure your own thinking to avoid following the crowd? How do you keep your nerves cool and you choose your own path? And so.
I think fundamentally comes down to like your personality. Like different personalities need to like, choose different strategies. That's my opinion. So I find that like the more kind of analytic and mathematical personalities, they will more tend to gravitate towards value investing. Like that's my style, that's my personality, and it works for me. But then if you are like more maybe like bullish, like outgoing kind of person, then these kind of guys, they more tend to gravitate towards growth investing, and that they will kind of build like expertise around that area. So you have to match your investing style to your personality.
Good. Then Timo, if you could change one thing in Finnish investors, what would it be?
One thing, maybe the diversification. I think Finnish people invest too much in Finnish stock market. Maybe that's the one thing. And we have had 3.5 years of really bad returns here in Helsinki Stock Exchange. Now we have a really nice few months. Let's keep that, but you should have let's say half of the portfolio outside of Finland.
Good. Then this is for Dov and Jakob. How do you see the future of the copy investing? Can it truly reshape the retail investing?
I think it really has the potential to do. I mean, when I speak to retail investors, it's particularly the thing that the fact that they get a face to the person who actually do the investments, and I think there's a lot of trust building in that process, where you actually got to understand who is the person behind investing my money. So I think it's really something that can grow from here. I think the banks for a really long time have been very happy getting their big fees and sort of hiding behind their big brands and compliance and regulation but I think now we are seeing copy traders and platforms like eToro challenge some of that, and I think that is something that retail investors would like to see more of.
I agree with Jakob, and it's also to what Timo said. Copy trading is the future, at least at eToro. It's the freedom to have access to the data in a transparent way. That's the future. The past of calling the bank and to give orders, sell and buy only through working hours, and you don't know what's going on. I do believe it's a thing of the past. And copy trading gives this freedom. So, and we see more and more people coming into it either as copiers or as popular investors, because once you see something so transparent and it's under your control to go in and out whenever you wish and from the palm of your hand. So I have very strong belief in this way.
So you think then that it could replace the traditional wealth management, and in the future that it's basically you then start to more and more trust your assets to smart portfolios of Sijoittaja or guys like Pietari, and it's...
Well, absolutely. Well, what Sijoittaja does, I don't want to exaggerate with the word, but it's revolutionary, because when you have a company that also provide you a smart portfolio, a portfolio that you can see exactly what they do and what they invest in, they also provide you with articles and analyst reports, and keep you updated and keep you involved And when you have this access, you are becoming wiser and smarter in your decision making. So if you see that this is how they did this month, this is how they did last year, everything comes down to decision making. When you just leave your money in the bank or when you tell them to invest in a hedge fund, the decision you have is very little, almost to nothing. They decide what they do. When you do it via copy trading, you have the decision in your hands. And when you have companies like Sijoittaja or Pietari that provide you all the information, keeping you in the loop, it just makes you stronger.
Do you see any like negative sides of it? Like maybe less regulation, it's not necessarily a negative thing, but like if there's like all the assets are behind the one guy or so, or something like that. That has maybe what are the most questions that your customers ask from you regarding the risks? So.
Sure. So today, when you are EU regulated, it's the same as a bank. Once you're EU regulated, and especially when now we're a listed company, the standards that we need to adhere to and that we need to comply are the same as any bank. And as the future progresses and as eToro develops, there's no change whatsoever. And like Jakob said, the banks are happy that the funds are there, and the hedge fund managers are happy. And I'm sure they're not so happy when funds are leaving, and that is why some aspects of that they're trying to push more, but today there's no difference.
Thank you. Then we have the last round. We have quick yes or no questions for each. So we start with that. Are there more opportunities than risks in the market right now? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes, are there more opportunities than risks in the market right now?
Absolutely.
Okay, I have to say no then. Yeah.
Opportunities, you always have to be optimistic.
Good, we can continue straight there. Then is AI already like generally useful for retail investors, or is it more for bigger institutions and corporations still? What is your personal opinion, yes or no? Is AI useful for retail investors?
Yes, but only to an extent.
It's very useful. Use it every day.
Yeah, I agree. AI can be very useful.
I think yes for research and understanding, but I think also no, because you shouldn't rely too much on it. There can be a lot of mistakes, and when I've been working with it, and now I know it's much longer than a yes or no. But just to give an example, you were asking how many cuts the ECB have done since last summer, and it was wrong about it. It said I think we just need to be aware that it's a tool. We shouldn't rely too much on it.
Yes, and if I can also add, so I don't also mean that don't go and ask that which is the stock to invest now. Don't use it like that. But if you have a stock, you can ask, like Pietari said, what this company does, what are the risks, stuff like that.
Thank you. Then this we already went through with eToro, but I would also like to hear from Timo and Pietari that can copy investing surpass the traditional wealth management? Do you see that it would be a mega trend in, let's say, 5 to 10 years, or even sooner?
Yes, I think that it can. I think it can grow 100 times from here. You can talk about the reasons.
You had like few copiers, I think, 2 years ago. You had some few thousand, and now you have, or even 600. Now you have 11,000. So you have likely seen personally the rather rapid growth.
Yeah, I mean, there's like there's the low fees, there's the transparency, and there's the communication. So those are the kind of 3 things that you get from copy trading, which you don't get from other things.
Yeah, I don't think it will pass the wealth fund management because most of the money in wealth management is from institutional investors. But like Pietari said, I really like the transparency, and I think the retail investors, those I don't know isn't going to, but if you are a modern retail investor, then it can pass.
Paneeli englanninkielinen osuus on tässä, niin me jatketaan. Tapio tulee ottaa puheenvuorojen kanssa, niin keneltä tahansa saa kysyä mitä tahansa ja englanniksi tai suomeksi niin voidaan tarvittaessa kääntää, jos kysymys on Doville tai Jakobille.
Joo, suomeksi kysyn Timolta, Arvi Kekäläinen nimeni, että kumpaa sinä pidät tärkeämpänä, osinkoja, jossa on muutama 100 000 euroa osinkoja, vai joku 2, 3, 4 miljoonan potti osakkeita? Kumpaa pidät tärkeämpänä?
No, jos noista pitäisi valita, niin kyllä mä ottaisin sen 200 000 osinkoina. Se olisi aika hyvä osinkotuotto, jos ottaa sen 2 miljoonan salkun. Ja jos olisi vielä kasvava osinko, niin ehdottomasti.
Onko muita kysymyksiä?
Täällä on edestä ja sitten oli takaa vielä sen jälkeen.
Joo, kysymys Pietarille, en tiedä haluatko vastata, mutta mikä osuus sun voitoista tuloista tulee niin kuin eToron tällaisena reward-osuutena?
No siis se on vielä niin kuin pienempi osuus kuin mitä mun omasta sijoitussalkusta tulee. Siis se on ihan merkittävä rahasumma, tietysti 12 000 kopioijaa, mutta kuitenkin edelleenkin tilanne on se, että enemmän tulee niin kuin niistä sijoitusvoitoista.
Mites energiasektori? Siitä ei usko kukaan sanoa mitään.
Energy sector.
Yes.
Any comments?
No, energiasektorilla on viimeisen 20 vuoden aikana ollut tyyliin niin kuin yksi hyvä vuosi. Eli silloin kun korot lähti voimakkaaseen nousuun ja tekkiosakkeet tuli alas, niin silloin energiasektorilla meni ihan hyvin. Ja sitten meillä oli hetkellinen megatrendi Suomessa, tämä nesteen nousu uusiutuvilla energialla, mutta siitäkin on aika lailla puhallettu ilmat pihalle niin kuin ilmapallosta enää muuta jäljellä kuin märkä pläntti. Mutta ehkä niin kuin se yhdyskuntapalvelut tavallaan se energiasiirto on niin kuin paljon mielenkiintoisempi ja sähköntuotanto kuin ihan puhas niin kuin energia. Mutta se ei ole tuottanut niin kuin viimeisen 20 vuotta varmaan niin kuin huonoin sektori, mitä on niin kuin olemassa. Mutta silloin kun se on jossain pohjalla, niin sitten arvosijoittajallehan se voi sopia. Ja tavallaan kyllähän nekin aina välillä nousee. En tiedä, haluaako Pietari kommentoida.
No, mulla on ollut öljy-yhtiöitä niin kuin silloin tällöin salkussa. Tällä hetkellä mun näkemys on se, että niin kuin öljyn hinta tulee laskemaan tai aika ei mene kauheasti ylöspäin. Sen takia mulla ei ole niitä osakkeita salkussa. Mutta tietysti öljy-yhtiöt on tällainen perinteinen arvosijoitussektori, että ne maksaa niin kuin isoja osinkoja ja niiden hintatulossuhte on alhainen. Sikäli ne on periaatteessa niin kuin mun aluetta tavallaan, mutta mun makronäkemys on tällä hetkellä se, että öljyn hinta ei tule menemään mihinkään ja sen takia mulla ei ole niitä salkussa.
Moni potterahansa siinä uudessa energiassa, mutta nyt on toi ydinenergia, niin sehän on noussut semmoisen 40% pohjista. Mitäs siellä tapahtuu?
No se perustuu just tähän yhdyskuntapalvelut-sektoriin, niin kuin, tähän vahvaan niin kuin sähköntuotantotarpeeseen. Eli tavallaan se on niin kuin ero siitä, kun energiayhtiöt on just niitä öljy-yhtiöitä, jotka tuottaa sitä, niin kuin, ajetaan autolla ja tankataan bensaa ja öljyä, mutta sitten tavallaan nämä ydinyhtiöt on sitä yhdyskuntapalvelusektoria, niin kuin sanoin, niin se on niin kuin kuuma sektori. Ja tähän valtavaan energian tarpeeseen, mitä datakeskukset syö ja mitä siis sähköautot ja kaikki, niin siihen megatrendiin se ei ole poistumassa. Ja sitä siis on kuinka monta kertaa pitää, niin kuin, jos vaikka jenkit siirtää nyt oikeasti sitä tuotantoa Amerikkaan, niin siellä pitää niin kuin moninkertaistaa energiantuotanto. Eli se perustuu siihen.
Miten se vaikuttaa, jos tuulivoimassa ja muuta, kun tuonne merelle tehdään näitä kaapeleita vaikka katkeilla?
No sinne varmaan pitää laittaa sitten vartiointia ja tehdä useampia kaapeleita ja muuta, mutta sehän on iso riski just tuolla Tanskan alueella ja varmaan täällä Jakobilta olisi kommentteja. Sillä saattaa olla niin yksi kaapeli, minkä varassa kaikki on ja sitten siellä on niin valtava tuulipuisto.
Mitä se niin osakemarkkinoilla sitten tapahtuu, tulee alas?
No ei sitä.
Vappuuko vai?
No varmaan se vaikuttaa sinne energiahintaan lähinnä tai sitten niihin yksittäisiin yhtiöihin, jotka omistaa sen tuulivoiman, mutta ei se niin osakemarkkinoihin nyt sillä isommalti vaikuta.
Jakob, your name was mentioned. You want to comment about the cables in Baltic Sea? If there's going to be some
farms and if there's some terrorist attacks.
So the question is?
That is there Do you see the risk if there's a big wind farms in the sea, close to Denmark, and then there are some attacks to those cables?
There's a lot of talk about it in the media. At least there were. We had the Nord Stream, right? That was back in 2022. The gas pipeline that was running basically through the territory of Denmark through to Bornholm, and I think after that it's become like a big, I think in a way a big media stunt thing they like to talk about. I don't see. I mean, I'm not a geopolitical analyst, but I wouldn't expect there to be a high risk of that would actually happen.
Yeah. How about the defense industry? How do you see it? It's really interesting. Just right now, it has been going up rapidly, and even today, the European defense industry has been jumping up. How do you see it?
Yeah, I think
in the long run.
Yeah, my concern about that is, I mean, I fully understand where I've been so far, that we have had all these announcements. I mean, now Denmark is even out to talk about a 5% spending of GDP. It's a lot of money, right? It's a small country, but it maybe
That's
other
why
countries.
that's why it came up.
Yeah. And what I think in the short run, there's a good momentum in it. You see, it's also become very politicized, and a lot of politicians want to go that way, spend more money. But I could also see that some years from now, maybe we see the world is getting a little bit more peaceful. We are not having the war in Ukraine anymore, maybe, and there are going to be other things that sort of settle everything down. And then at that point, just because the public spending and deficits in Europe is very high, and you have an aging population as well, I could worry that then you would start cutting down in military at that point, or defense, in order to be able to basically give what could be basic needs for the citizens. So I think short run, it has some time to run, but maybe more in the long run, I at least I see that risk being there.
How about the construction industry?
Construction, I think, if it's somehow related to Germany and companies that sort of can benefit from that 1 trillion fiscal stimulus into defense and into infrastructure projects as well, I think that's sort of going to drip down in many industrial companies around that's associated somehow with German supply chains. And I think construction is also going to benefit from that.
Vielä on aikaa sijoittajaturvista.
A question for eToro rep, that the AI was mentioned, that are there any AI tools coming for the users, like those that you can do background checking for companies and stuff like that?
Yes, it is in the works, and already now in the search bar you can search for companies, things like that, but it's in the works as an agent that will see how we can develop it for the user's benefit.
Tuleeko vielä mieleen jotain eTorolle tai sitten Pietarille tai Timolle? Mikäli ei, niin pystyy tulemaan myös toki tilaisuuden jälkeen nykäiseen hihasta, jos haluaa henkilökohtaisesti kysyä, mutta meidän puolesta alkaa ilta olemaan tässä, niin mulla ei muuta kuin, että rekisteröitykää eToron Sijoittaja.fi linkillä tai QR-koodilla, mitä tuolla pöydillä oli, niin saatte Sijoittaja.fiin edut sitä kautta, siellä on hieman matalammat kustannukset ja myöskin Sijoittavien jäsenyyteen kuuluu, eli ketkä tänne osallistunut, niin se kaikille mahdollistetaan, niin saa muun muassa verotuksen apua sieltä. Tallenteet tulee myöskin jälkikäteen sekä linkit, joilla pystyy rekisteröityä, jos tänään ei vielä halua tehdä. Ja kiitoksia vielä kaikille, ketkä osallistuu, ja ottakaa laajakassit mukaan. kenellä ei vielä ole siellä. Ja antakaa myöskin palautetta ja kysymyksiä voi tosiaan myöskin pistää jälkikäteen, niin mielellään vastataan niihin ja järjestetään lisää tämän tyyppisiä tapahtumia. Annetaan vielä iso käsi panelisteille.